Thanks for tuning in to the Just Go Play podcast, where we look to develop and promote a positive youth sports experience. As always, we are available for speaking and private engagements and can be reached at info@justgoplay.ca. You can also catch full video versions of our podcast on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to visit us at justgoplay.ca. Enjoy the episode. Hi, everyone. Daryl Devonish here. Welcome to the Just Go Play podcast. We have an amazing guest for you today. We're here with Ken Martell and Matt Young. Guys, we're going to be talking hockey. Back to hockey. I know everyone, some of you guys are like, Daryl, is that all you talk about? Today we're talking hockey with Ken Martell, Technical Director of USA Hockey. Ken, how you doing?
I'm great, Daryl. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you for being here. So to get the show started, can we get the audience to hear your backstory? How did you get to this point with USA Hockey? Why are you sitting at the front of the room? So just if you can share that with the audience, just so right off the bat they know who we're talking to.
Sure. Well, this is I just got a note here as a reminder from our office, a little annual, how long you've been working at USA. This is my 22nd year now working at USA Hockey. So, but a lot of different jobs along the way. Prior to USA Hockey, I was a university coach, Division I colleges, several universities in the United States. I transitioned over to working for our national team program. I was a coach with our two standing national teams, player personnel guy for a while there too. And then probably almost 15 years ago now, transitioned over to our youth side of things. I think in a lot of sports, people try and gravitate to the highest levels because they think, well, that's where it's really interesting, right? I want to be around the best players. I want to be around, the national teams, all that kind of stuff. And, internally it was more, well, who's really paying attention to what's going on with our youth programs? And we had a real small department that started. We've grown quite a bit in the last 10 years, but it was myself, Kevin McLaughlin, in our office, Mark Boxer and Mark Tabram were really the three. Mark was doing coach education. We had one person there. And so a really small group that was sort of focused on the youth side of things. And really at the end of the day, as an organization from USA Hockey, we are a grassroots program. Our national teams and all that are really a small part of what USA Hockey does. So for us, we just really important that we're spending time and focusing on youth hockey and youth development. So that's how I got to where I'm at now. Just thought it was really important that we're paying more attention to the bulk of our membership,
Yeah, Ken, and I got to say, this is one of the reasons I really enjoy speaking with you. You're always making yourself available. You're always learning. You're absolutely right. There is this chase and rise to be at the best and at the top. And, you look at a lot of European countries and all the sports, some of their best coaches come down and really nurture and cultivate that grassroots level of sport, because there is no high performance without a great grassroots experience. Everybody knows that. But still, some of the reasons are money, some of the reasons are prestige, ego, whatever the case may be. But I got to say, it's really refreshing to have you and your team consistently, attending workshops, learning, trying to get better, sharing, offering your time. And that's one of the reasons why we want to connect with you. And I think it's a really important message that you've given, which is why I'm reiterating it, is that if we don't have that solid foundation, if we don't have that core of great experiences for as many as possible, as long as possible, the best environments possible, we're not going to get that high level and high performance rewards that we're looking for. So thanks so much for joining us. We've talked to a lot of different people over the last couple of weeks in the podcast, and the themes are culture, leadership, how to get involved, how to make change, and behavior change really seems to be one of the big issues and one of the big hot topics. And I know from our conversations and listening to you, that's one of the things that really every sport struggles with, is how do we move from the way parents and coaches and all these individuals think that sport should be applied or nurtured or grown, to how the science and the knowledge from the experts tells us how it should be grown. So can you give us a little overview, because you were one of the first people, correct me if I'm wrong, at national governing bodies to come to Canada, listen to the long-term athlete development framework, take it back to the States, go, okay, you know what? It's not just a cookie cutter. We're going to nuance it. We're going to add our signature to it, and we're going to roll it out. Can you bring us up to speed on how that's gone, how it went, and where you're going next?
Well, the little backstory on that, I guess the timing was just perfect for when we were exposed to long-term athlete development up in Canada. We were going through a process where a bit of a self-evaluation on USA Hockey internally. Like, we had started our national team program with 16 and 17-year-olds, 97, right in that time frame. And I'd been involved in the first, 8 years of the 9 years of the program in there. And we'd learned a bunch of things about dealing with teenagers. And we hired a lot of pro and college coaches that were dealing with older athletes, adults, and then came back and tried to apply some of those same principles to the kids. It wasn't working out very well, because kids are different. And we learned that, wait a second, we need to make some changes. And through that process, when I transitioned over to the national office, we were going through this, okay, well, we like what we've done with our national team program, but how do we take some of that knowledge and apply it back into our membership? And we were right at a time where we were doing that self-evaluation. We were going around and we were looking to see, well, what is really going on in youth hockey in our country? And, the more you raise up and look under the hood of the car, you kind of go, ooh, that's broke. We need some help here. Maybe have a nice shiny car, but the inner workings weren't where we needed them.
Right.
And some things that were driving that, as a hockey playing nation, we want to be better. So we weren't having great success necessarily internationally from the top end. So you can't say that things were the pipeline was, so to speak, doing what it needed to do. But more importantly, from about 2000 to 2006, 2007 there, we dropped about almost 40,000 male youth players in enrollment, which that's an enormous number of kids that we, reduced in this membership. Well, wait a second, why are kids leaving our sport?
Right.
We had great growth through the 90s. A lot of rinks had popped up in warm weather areas, and that provided some expansion. So there was no contraction in the number of rinks, but there was a contraction in the number of kids playing. So obviously something's not right here, right? And that's an alarm bell that went off with us. So we were doing this research and got exposed to LTAD. We were down at actually here in Colorado Springs. They were having a conference with our U.S. Olympic Committee at the time. And a couple of people from Canada were down talking about long-term athlete development. And myself and Kevin McLaughlin in our office are looking at each other going like, this sounds just a lot like where we're at the moment. We need to look into this. Mm-hmm. So we reached out. Our Canadian friends were unbelievably supportive, unbelievably helpful in just sharing everything. So we dug in, started to look at this and said, well, how does this really apply to our sport? And we had a chance, and we continually have a chance to go and constantly learn from some of our European colleagues, our Finnish friends and Swedish friends, and others in the sport globally that do a really good job. And then our connection with our Olympic Committee. There are other sports in the United States that have very similar issues to what we have. I think because the more you get into this and the more you start talking to other sports, we're not that different. The technical and tactical of what we do is different, but the culture of youth sport is the same. So we find that we're having the same problems. And, some of our other sports have had some pretty good solutions to those problems. So we're just paying attention, trying to collect the information. And I think what the LTAD did for us was really give us a framework. It's not as prescriptive sometimes as people think. You need to be flexible. You need to fit the situation that you have. You need to fit your sport. And we were able to, with help from our Canadian friends, really kind of create something that was, that we thought might fit our culture, might fit how we operate. We're not trying to copy anybody. If you're out trying to be and copy what someone else is doing, well, then you're never going to exactly be as good as them, right? I mean, our goal is to be better. And that's how it really started. So we took that information, and again, the timing was just perfect. We had some discussions with the National Hockey League, and the NHL and some of the owners at the time wanted to make a greater investment into hockey in the United States. If you think about it, I mean, at that particular time, 24 of the franchises were located here in the United States. And a lot of those owners are Americans. They said, you know what, we need to maybe put a little bit back and invest in the growth of the sport, the development of the sport. And USA Hockey and the NHL have really two long-term goals for the sport in the United States. We want more American kids to play the sport and want more American kids to play the sport really well. That's pretty simple.
So Ken, did you get a lot of pushback when you brought this in? Like I can imagine you going to these coaches that have been coaching for a while and you're saying, all right, boys, we're going to do things a little different. Boys, girls, we're going to do things a little differently. And they're looking at you like, what? Did you get a lot of pushback?
Yeah, we did, but we didn't get pushback from people at the highest level. The people that are at the other end, and the coaches in our university system, the coaches at the National Hockey League level that are involved with us, who have their kids back involved in our sport, so they're around and they see what's going on, and we have no issue with them. They're huge supporters of what we're doing because they understand really what it takes maybe to turn out at the other end, or what they want for their own kids, which is just a great youth sports experience, or the youth sport experience that they had when they were coming up that made the sport, what made them so passionate about ice hockey, the fun, right? So really not much pushback at the highest level. We had more pushback from the grassroots level, or people that, that have been doing something the same way for a long time, or just comfortable in what, and how they operate, or change.
Maybe
I think
Matt was talking to.
Yeah, it more than anything, I think our staff, when we first started, we got together about 6 months after everyone was hired, and we were putting people into place. We're just going to start this project with our staff, and everybody kind of looked around and said, okay, this isn't about hockey. I mean, really quick, we figured out that, because we thought, well, we got these good hockey people. We're going to go out, we're going to share some information, and this isn't going to be that hard. This makes a lot of sense. And we figured out really quick, whoa, it's not about hockey. This is mostly about change.
Wow. Well, I think,
and we weren't change experts, right? So.
And I can say in my own little world here at the GTHL here in Toronto, we're seeing the same thing where we're told that we got to make some changes if we want to continue to grow the game, especially at the grassroots level. And there's some people that are a pushback. Again, I can see we brought the smaller rinks in for the little guys. Everyone was up in arms. So you're right. I totally get the change and it happening at the lower levels where guys were like, this is not happening. We're going to make our own league. Now, did you have stuff like that going on? Guys saying their own league?
Oh, yeah. And we still have pushback from some areas around our country. We're 10 years in, and I would say some really good things. We've made a lot of progress. We really have. I mean, our staff, sometimes it's tough because you're right in the middle of things all the time, and it's hard to see the forest because of the trees, right? But when we do kind of stick our head up and look around, and start to measure things like in terms of the number of kids that are playing our sport, our retention rates, kids that come out to hockey and that decide that, no, I'm going to stick with this. Right? And it's hard to be a really good 18-year-old or 19-year-old if you quit at 8 or 9, right?
Right. Did you have to draw a hard line in the sand? Did you have to draw hard for these organizations?
No, well, we're like other governing bodies. We're mandating a lot of things is not what we do in a volunteer structure. I mean, we do some things. Some things are within our control. You know, the rule book, the playing rules, those things are within our control to dictate. You know, some of the, you know, rostering sizes and there are some things that as a governing body we have pretty good control over, and other things that we don't. So we made some major changes along the way, but it was strictly, you know, what did we think was going to have secondary effects and tertiary effects in those changes? So, and we had to make sure that we kind of spent our political capital on things that we thought were going to make the most difference. You know, I think our staff started off pretty hard line on some things, and we figured out afterwards, because we're dealing with change, maybe it's better to get people 85% on the bus with you and on board than 100% and lose them because over that, you know, fighting over that 15. That last 15%. So we kind of have massaged and, you know, our messaging and how we work and where can we meet people, what can we get them to buy in with, because if then they're 85% on board with us, well, no, we can chip away at the last 15% over time, right? Versus just this is it, and you know, our way or the highway. And
that wasn't working with everybody.
That's not working. No, I mean, and again, we made a lot of mistakes too. I mean, we really did. And looking back, some of the things that we didn't do well, we didn't handle the rink industry as well as we should have. You know, sometimes when you change people's business model, they dig their heels in right away. Whether it's going to help them or not, it's, again, you're going to change how I earn a living. Whoa. You know, they don't want to hear any of it. And then we had to go back and then show people, well, you know what, this is going to support your business, and it makes really good business sense. You know, for you, more kids in your rink every day. You know, if you're going to make your living off 100 kids, why not make it off of 500, where you can reduce the cost per family, make it cheaper and easier for them, and you know, if 5% of your business were to change or something, not as drastic when it's 500 versus the other, you know, just ways to do things.
On that note, has that been a factor in terms of growing the game in the U.S. at the youth level, the cost?
Cost is out of hand in our sport. I think we've been very fortunate. I mean, in reality, right, we're a country of 330 million people. So there's this, in some areas where you know, you look at maybe Southern California where there's LA Basin, I don't know, it's got 10 million people or 12 million people in the LA Basin. Well, the percentage of people that can afford to play the sport is small, but it's still several million people. So, you know, they've done a good job of being able to grow within the area that can afford it. But even in those areas, I think they've pushed up to the limit on, you've capped who can actually come out and play. You know, when it's $500 an hour for ice, well, you know, who can
afford that? Yeah.
Afford it, right? So the opportunities that we're doing, we're really limiting ourselves, and we've tried to attack that how we can by, you know, showing organizations, you know what, you don't need to put just 10, 12, 8-year-olds on the ice. You know, like you can actually run some efficient, high quality sessions with, you know, 50 kids at that age on the ice, and it's just fine. So now the cost can come down. But at the end of the day, the things that are really ramping up the cost, it's that, I know Matt's talked about it, that race to the bottom where at 9 years old, people in California maybe think they've got to get on an airplane and fly to Toronto to play in a tournament this weekend. But not just this weekend, but every weekend.
Yeah.
Right?
The travel team.
Yeah. And we tell everybody, you get good at your local rink. Right? That's where, and what it costs to get on an airplane, even in a really expensive place where ice time's really a lot of money. If you're going to take your team one trip, if you take what all those families spent and you just plowed it into ice time at your local rink, now you have some development going on.
Excellent point.
Our priorities, or what people think are important, really don't line up with what the science says is important for players getting better, or what everyone says they want. It's those exposure tournaments and things. And I'm not against kids going to something like that. You want to do that once, twice, okay, I get it. No worries. But the ones that are chasing that all year round, we talk about, we try and send the message: is it exposure or being exposed? Right? I mean,
why, yes.
You get better. Spend your time and energy on getting better. At home, at your local rink, working, doing what you need to do, and then the occasional exposure. Okay.
Yeah.
If you keep running around and not working on your craft, then
I think that comes with we got to test what we've done now. We got to play against the best to see if we're making progress. And I think that's why these travel teams, it's like we're dominant. We've become a dominant force in our area. Let's go test our stuff against the rest of the nation or Canada. Because if they got all the best players up there, or the best players are in a certain region, we got to go test ourselves. So I think that's where this comes from. And, talking to parents, like, we want to play these guys. We had a good team, an 09 team, and we get invited by different teams in the States all the time to come play us. So we get it.
It's parent coach driven, not kid centered,
Yeah. So Ken, can you clarify one thing for our audience right now?
Sure.
If your son or daughter is good enough to get to the next level, can you assure those parents that they will be seen?
Absolutely. We're a really small sport. I mean, people think we're this enormous sport, right? But we are not. If you're good, people will see you. It's the internet. There's no place to hide. People. It really is. And the other issue too is we're ramping it up too soon. Like, who needs to see you at 12? I mean, who are you being exposed to?
Yeah, absolutely.
No one's going. You can't be a 12-year-old and turn 13 and play in the National Hockey League, or playing college, or play major junior. Like, those coaches, the people at the real level of the sport, where it really matters, don't really care, because they know that at 14, 15, even there, we can't predict. I mean, you look at just look at the history of, like, exceptional players for the OHL, WHL, Quebec, right? And some of those guys don't turn out to be, exceptional,
right?
Or have that career. Right. It's way too soon. So, patience. Again, work on your craft. You don't. It doesn't have to be this huge money, expensive thing. You don't have to chase it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Is this parents or coaches selling the dream?
I think it's both. I think it's absolutely both. As adults, sometimes our egos get in the way of things. It's parents. It's that fear of being left out. Parents don't know a lot of times, or they're just really, really nervous about, I want my son or daughter to have the best chance possible. I want to do everything in my power to make sure that they have, the best chance to move on, because they really love ice hockey. Great, who doesn't? But it's a misunderstanding of what is going to allow them later on to actually have the chance.
And that's what I really like. Yeah, and Ken, that's what I really like about what USA Hockey has done. It's moved off of the blaming of the parents to an education and engagement of the parents. So,
Yeah.
we heard from Wade Gilbert, who does a lot of work with you guys in coach education. We heard from Mike O'Donnell of the PGA, both talking about in different sports and different vocations, both talking about the engagement piece and the fact that we got to move away from all parents are crazy and move into a spot where we can actually educate them. So what Wade had suggested, which I really liked, was why not have a mandatory 1-hour session for parents? If you are coming to this club, you have to sit and listen to this because it's going to be in your best interest. And then you make it in their best interest and you try to pull them on board and do the onboarding that way, because the whole let's throw something in your face, it just creates this contentiousness. And you nailed it. We already know that ego and FOMO are two primary human motivators. So how can we harness that and go, we're going to pull you into this system and we're going to answer your questions before they're asked. We're going to bring you on the bus. Do you have something to say? Call me. Here's how, and when you do call me, this is what it should sound like. Call me about your development. Don't call me about the score of the game. Don't call me about the line changes that I made, because you're not a coach. But call me if you have a concern or question, or you need to know how to get your young son or daughter from where they are to the next level. So I really like that approach by USA Hockey. You guys have podcasts, you have webinars, you have coach education, you've got parent resources. You are really one of the first NGBs that I've seen break it down so that people can go find what they need to find on your site or have these tools and resources and knowledge. But as you know, people don't use it. So it goes into my question, how do we as a sport system, and it's not just hockey, it's everyone, you made a great point. How do we move from that? We have a whole bunch of information that can help you, but you're not using that information. What's the next step?
Well, if I had all the answers, we'd be much farther along. Again, there's things that we can do as an NGB, and there's things that our structure, for a lot of organizations, sometimes their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. Like our greatest strength is our size, our numbers, the volunteers that we have out there in the field, because we have some phenomenal people that do an unbelievable job in our sport. Exactly. But sometimes that structure can fall apart too, because when you have maybe the wrong volunteer in a place, or then maybe it's a stop on the message, or even staff. For us, we're so large, we can't be everywhere, we can't get everywhere. So it's how do you scale these things?
Right.
I mean, we've done a good job in certain areas and then not so good in another. I mean, internally we've been 10 years with our ADM program. We have a phenomenal staff and some great volunteers that are working to try and carry this message at club level, at ice level, right? Being at 60,000 feet from the NGB, like you're a long ways from the ice and the ice rink and what's going on. So it really takes people on the ground at those levels to affect change. And our end, we haven't done a good job of scaling our efforts to hit the 2,400 youth clubs we have in the United States. That's been a challenge for us in finding ways to do that.
Yeah, and is that a Hockey USA issue, or is that an all sports issue? Is that something
I think it could be an all sports issue. I just think it's a challenge. Our sports structure in the United States is, we do get a chance to spend time with our colleagues in Finland and Sweden, and we're envious of some of their structures because they're so small.
Right.
They can get to rink level, or they can connect with their clubs much easier, much faster. From my end, we'll have discussions with them on something, and their ability to rapidly deploy information to their clubs it's like at light speed compared to what we seem to be able to do and affect change. So their ability to implement, but their size has some issues too. Like, again, we have our advantages, they have our advantages. They envy some of the things we have, right? But you look at this, you try and learn lessons from how they're doing things, and, you know, or looking at how youth sport is delivered in certain countries, or you know, what is it that they're doing that might fit our culture too? Some things they do just don't fit our culture, and we're not going to run our head against the wall on things that just don't make any sense for us. So,
and that's a great point for our listeners. It's a great point for our listeners, because here you are as USA Hockey, you are collaborating with other international hockey federations on best practice. And I think it's really important for our listeners, even in their own clubs, and Wade said this too, get outside your club, see what other people are doing, ask the questions, listen, you know, be that learner that then can take those pieces and bring it back and mold. Too often we get stuck in our own box with our own group and our own people, and we just keep going and going and going. And there's so many other opportunities. And I think that's a great example of a national organization going to Sweden, to Finland, asking these questions and actually working together with the coaches staff. So kudos to you. Great job.
Well, it's not even just in your own sport. It's there are other sports that are doing really good. I was fortunate enough to be a guest of Sport New Zealand this past year for 2 weeks and deal with, you know, with the All Blacks and with rugby and, you know, their sporting culture, and to learn and see what they're doing. And they're, you know, one of the things that I think I see that's so impressive about some of their sporting culture is their willingness to change.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, for me, one of the things that makes the All Blacks so great in rugby is the fact that they've been able to make major pivots throughout their history, recognize some things and make the shift, you know, which culturally, you know, when you're winning, when you're perceived as being number one, you know, sometimes it's even harder to make change because you can't see the forest because of the trees sometimes, right? Or why are you winning? And is it because of A and B, or really is it because of C and D, right? And sometimes we attribute our success, but you really got to look under the hood. So,
question: is there certain regions in the States doing it better? Like we said, the States are very big. Is certain regions doing it better? And I don't want to like.
Yeah, you know, for sure. Like, I don't know, doing it better.
Growing. Is it growing faster in certain areas?
Yes, our non-traditional areas, some of them, I think at some level, maybe there's less resistance there because there's the lack of tradition. But yet, you know, I look at Minnesota for us, which is a very good, it's our number one hockey playing state. They have the most players playing. Right? So they have, if they were their own country, okay, they would be the fourth largest hockey playing country in the world, Minnesota, right?
Wow.
Now, Ontario would be, you know, if you kind of scale things like that, they'd be, right? So, I mean, Canada, US, Russia, and then kind of Minnesota would be in there. But they have a historic structure of community-based sport. And there's challenges in that system and structure are under threat. Don't get me wrong, they have their issues. You know, but for kids hockey or kids sport, that community-based structure is one of the things that is really, really powerful in keeping kids involved. You know, if you want Olympic champions in a sport, you need three things, or three major things. You have to have financial, you have to have resources, you have to have a population, and you have to have culture around that sport. If you have two of those, you can produce Olympic champions. This is from our Olympic committee looking at other countries and how things operate.
I like that.
Minnesota has, you know, they have all three. You know, they have a culture around the sport. They have lots of kids that are playing, and they have financial resources. They have lots of rinks, to places, and they have all three. So they produce players. But, you know, you in their structure, you can't get 6 communities to come together and make one 9-year-old super team.
Right.
Right. Their boundaries and the structures that they do, they kind of keep it, you know, within, you know, within reason. And then they've done some really, really good things, like the community up in Duluth, where they've said, you know what, we're just going to play internally here in Duluth, in the city, at 10 and under. We're not going to travel to Minneapolis with our teams. We're just going to take all the little city rinks, a bunch of outdoor rinks, really cool, right? And we're just going to play internal. We're not going to try and form one super 10-year-old team to travel around, because we know it's not important. So people there within that culture, within that structure, they get it. And again, it's under pressure and under threat to keep up with the Joneses, because they see things happening elsewhere and they think, well, maybe we're being left behind. They're not. That structure actually keeps things in perspective for kids. So
brilliant. So Ken, you had a good run of the ADM. You went, I wanted to bring us back to this, what you just said, the All Blacks and their ability to pivot. You had a good run at the ADM. You've had your learning experiences, ups and downs. What's next for USA Hockey? Where does USA Hockey go as we return to play, as we build it back better? What's next?
For us, really, right now, some of the things that we're doing are around coach development. We've made a large pivot in our coaching education program. We're changing how we do what we do within that structure, looking more at adult learning and like, how do we make what it is that we do from a coaching ed side of things impactful? But then we also understand as an NGB that formal coach education is a really, really tiny piece to a coach's evolution and journey. And where does real learning happen? Well, real learning happens sort of day to day in your environment at the rink. Like, again, 60,000 feet, how do we do more at ice level with people that are affecting change? And from a club perspective, it's how do we work with our coaches more often? How do we provide them support in that environment? It's not necessarily telling them what they have to do. It's who's supporting the coach day to day in the ice room, helping them communicate with parents, helping them do, again, provide. Being a youth sport coach is an overwhelming job sometimes, because it's not how a lot of people are making their living. Right? It's not your full-time job for a lot. It's volunteer. So they're donating their time, and it's becoming harder and harder for our volunteer coaches based on the expectation that parents are putting on it. So for us, it's how do we scale coach development in our clubs to help support our coaches in that environment? And I think, the country that may be doing it the best right now is New Zealand. Across all their sports, some really fascinating stuff that they have going. Our Finnish colleagues are working pretty hard on this as well, but for us, that's one of our initiatives. And then how do we make the job of our volunteer people in our local clubs easier and not more difficult?
Right.
And what are the resources that we need that make their jobs easier? I know, Matt, you're big into culture. I know some of the things that you've done. I think that's been a missing piece for us. Right. We still gravitate towards, even when I'm telling you our pivot here, or our emphasis is moving in this direction of coach development. Still back to, there's still a lot of X's and O in there, but it's, for us, the pivot is the environment that the coach is creating, or the environment that the club is creating. Right? Culture comes into that. And our pivot is not on more X's and O's. Like these little lectures, you can just pick up one of these and find as many drills. It's not about it. It's about how to coach.
Absolutely.
Love it.
So that's the pivot for us within our formal coach education program. And then us trying to figure out how do we scale support for coaches in the field to help them with what it is that they do. And again, culture. How do we improve the culture around youth sport?
Yeah, really interesting. I want to do two things because I know, Daryl, you got lots to say around this. So the first thing was Wade, and in our conversation with him, one of the things that I liked that he said was, going into a club and having a coach mentorship program. So there's a leader of the coaches in the club, because
Yes.
as you know, lots of coaches just check in, check out. They don't even know, Ken's coaching U8s, Matt's coaching
Mhm.
U10s, Daryl's coaching U14s. We never talk. And we just blame each other. Oh, I can't believe Matt sent this kid up like this. They don't even know how to do X, Y, and Z. Having that, establishing that unit or coach mentorship within the club, within the club, and he put that forward as a great idea, which I totally agree with. As a matter of fact, I actually believe that there should be leaders in an athlete leader, a parent leader, a coach leader, an administrative leader, and an officials leader that become the spokespeople for those units in a club, so that
Yes.
actually could come together and solve issues a lot quicker than we solve some issues. But what I really liked also, what you just said, Ken, was the shift. It's not away from, it's adding the how do we nurture and develop things like confidence and connection and character?
Yes.
Because like you said, the X's and O's, I mean, we've drilled that to nausea. And really, that's so great to hear that the coach development is going to start adding those pieces. How do I connect with the kids? Because at the end of the day, at a volunteer level, there's nothing more rewarding as a coach at a volunteer level, even or a high performance level, where you have kids going, "Hey, coach, you changed my life." And I didn't, not because I went to the NHL, not because I was on the junior national team, but because you helped me believe in myself. That's quality coaching, is helping young men and women believe in themselves first, and then the system second. And I think a lot of times we got that backwards. We want to jam them into the systems and jam them into the systems instead of going, you know what, you can do this, and it's okay to fail, and it's okay to, I know you're going through X, Y, Z. So it's great with that level of coach education. And Daryl, I know you know this. You just went through this, and maybe you can share the story about how you brought that culture in, and what it did to that team that you were working with.
And I want to applaud you, Ken, because you're not hearing too many technical directors talk about culture. They're usually talking about the X's and O's and how we're going to start winning and change the route of our organization. So I want to applaud you on that, because I don't know if there's many coaches or sort of technical directors talking about that, how important this is. So we saw this with our own experience with the Domino's Flyers that we worked with, an 09 team, where we helped change a culture. We were a mid-pack, bunch of lunch bucket guys, and all we did was start change the culture and put confidence in them, and talk to them, and talk to the parents, and find out, what do they want. They wanted to have fun. They wanted to get better. They didn't want to feel like, less than anyone else. They want to feel important on the team, like they matter. And once everyone felt like they mattered, they started playing above the next level up. And I often get asked, what did you do to that team? Who's the coach? What's the training? Because everyone takes it back to the technical.
Oh, yeah, they think it's
who did you guys start skating?
Else?
Yeah, who did you guys start skating with? Who's the shooting coach? None of that happened. We had the same people. We just started treating them differently, and the parents saw it, and this is what led to the success of that team. We got kids that never used to say boo. They're talking, they're leading, they're sharing their experiences, they're correcting guys in drills, they're pushing each other. They work so hard in practice that games are like a rest now for them. They say, God, man, games are a rest. So this is the culture that these guys have, and they don't want to go anywhere else. Like, you can offer these guys stuff. They're like, no, man, I'm staying. That is,
fantastic, girl.
and I think that's what I'm hearing from you, that this is what needs to be shared. And like you said, I don't know how you scale this, because I would love to scale this feeling or this culture thing, all the other coaches, so they can experience and watch what we just actually, right in front of my eyes. And anyone that was, and Matt always said, you should have documented this. You should have videotaped. This could be a document. Because it doesn't happen all the time. That's not the norm. So anyway, I want to share that.
That's fantastic. Like, again, isn't that what youth sports is about? Like, if we get out of the way, and just provide the right encouragement. Like our players they all surprise you. And it doesn't matter whether it's the house league kids or the travel team, whatever it is. If we provide the right environment, they will thrive.
Players,
and
yep.
That's where I used to think for us that the hockey director in our clubs would be the person that would be able to do this, because we have this evolving paid hockey director position that a lot of our youth clubs have. And what I find is their job right now, like they spend all their time running around putting out fires versus actually, I'm concerned about bandwidth. Like, for example, this next season in my own youth club here in town, I'll be the 10U coordinator. And my job isn't, I'll be on the ice with the teams. My job really isn't going to be there to watch the kids and make corrections with the kids. I'm going to be on the ice watching the coaches and helping them improve and, ask them and help them along with their coaching journey.
Communication.
But then provide tasks and challenges for them along the way that allow them to connect better with their kids. Right? And then
good.
Some practices, like I won't go on the ice, just go into the stands and sit in the stands with the parents and go, hey, everybody, this is what the coaches are actually doing out there. This is what they're trying to do. They may not be accomplishing it, because, we all know that things go up and down, but, communicating with the parents so that I always walk in with our club and I watch, say, at a game and the coach is on the bench, right? And the parents are in the stands and they're, the penalty's called and they see it one way, right? And they go crazy. And, how does the coach actually communicate with the parent? Like, he's handling the kids. He's across the ice on the bench. Like, who from the club is there to help communicate with the parents and go, you know what? That wasn't a penalty, right? The kid just fell down. Don't worry about it. Or that's not how our expectations as a club for you as a parent. If you want to yell and cheer, great. Yell and cheer for both teams, but you're not going to jump on the referees or whatever it is. We don't do enough in communicating and setting those expectations for the parents or informing them of what the club is actually doing, what the coach is actually trying to accomplish. So for me, it's who do we create in that role that's there to support coaches and support the parents and support everybody within the club? Because I'm finding within our structure right now, the hockey director just doesn't seem to have the bandwidth. On a club with 600 kids, well, how can that hockey director be at all those different practices and all those different games and all the, so we need to find something else. And this is sort of what we're looking at to try and do. We'll see how it goes, I can't tell you if it's going to work, but
looking forward to hearing this. We'd love to have you back and find out how this is all going down the road.
Obviously this is not going to be a normal season coming up. But this is something that we're going to test and make sure that we figure it out at least and see what works, what doesn't.
I think it's a good year to test things this year. If you're going to test something, this is the year to test.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's got to be built back better. And this is an opportunity because you're not in the business to work on the business. And we talk about it all the time. What I really am excited is that your Hockey USA is not the only example of this shift away from just the technical tactical. You hear Jean Cote, you hear Wade Gilbert talk about transformational coaching, and really you see a lot of sports. We have to now, because where it was a nice to do before, it's a have to do now with everything that's happened in society. So it's great that you're going to get support, and that kids, whether they play this sport or that sport, may show up and have the same experiences, the same nomenclature, the same philosophies, the same ideologies, and ultimately the same culture. So that's just great to hear. And it's going to benefit the most important people, because this is a customer service business. And whether you're a private ice rink, like you said at the beginning of this conversation, and you're looking to up your ante, there's no better way to do that than make as many people feel special about themselves as possible.
That's right.
And enjoy the experience. Okay. Ken, thanks so much for joining us. We know you're super busy. It's really great to have you and all of the other speakers that we've had over the last couple of weeks. You're doing great things. You're always open to learning. You always make yourself available. And I know you're humble, but it's important for our listeners to know what Hockey USA is doing, because sometimes it's so easy to just criticize when you don't know what you don't know. So to hear, hey, listen, this was our evolution. Here's where we were. These are some of the issues we had. We weren't perfect. We failed. We're trying. We're collaborating with other countries and other groups. And this is our focus as we kind of go into the next iteration of ADM for the Hockey USA. Daryl and I always like to finish off with first steps. So what would you recommend? And it can be for coaches, it can be for parents, it can be for athletes, it can be for administrators. What are some first steps in taking towards some of the big topics that we covered today from your perspective? Just, and it don't have to be.
Yeah. One or two points that you want people to leave this podcast. What do you want if someone were listening to this podcast? What's the 3 things or 2 things that you'd want them to get out of this podcast from this?
Get out of the podcast. Well, change is hard. Like, that's whatever you're going to do. If you're going to within your own program, even within your team, like, I'm sure it wasn't easy. Daryl, you probably had some resistance, maybe a little bit right away when you were making some philosophical changes. So that's always hard. We are most adults are in this for the right reasons. They really do. They want the kids to succeed. They just don't know necessarily how. Their perceptions are of what happens at the National Hockey League level or what they see on TV or those things. And they think that, well, that's what needs to be applied to little kids. If they're going to make it up here, then that's what needs to happen. And it's not. It's 2 different things. So it's having some patience, understanding that change is not easy. It's going to take a lot of effort. But if you're persistent and, you're focusing on that culture and the right environment for the kids, then, at the end of the day, you're going to make some big changes. And as you said, Matt, it may not materialize in them playing in the National Hockey League, but if you live in a community, you want those kids to grow up to be great neighbors, right? To live in your community and be good citizens and, right, be a great part of society that you're proud of, right? That you want to deal with as adults. So we're in
employees, everything.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Just love the game.
Love the game. Yep. That's first. Help them create that passion for the sport.
I love it, Ken. So on that note, thank you so much for being here, Ken. Yeah. I know you're a busy man, as Matt said. Love you. Had some great points today. And I got a great sort of overview that you've given to the audience of what's going on in hockey at the USA level, Hockey USA, and where you guys are going. We'd love to have you back on down the road, see how this plays out. But we finish up with just saying, guys, just go play. All right? Get out there, just go play. Thanks.
Just go play. Yeah.